Part 13. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 121. The sword god was stunned. He stared at Chen Hao. Chen Hao put away the trap rope card and picked up another card. Cub stage Dark Lolita. Taming degree, 0. Chen Hao touched his chin. I always feel something strange, but I don't know where it is strange. Forget it, don't think about it, let's raise it first. Book. Chen Hao opened the book and put the card into the book. Book. The book disappeared. Chen Hao retracted his sight, but found that Huo Feng, Xiao Ying, Tu Yi, and the sword god were staring at him. Chen Hao was slightly startled. What's wrong? The sword god opened his mouth slightly, and he looked at Chen Hao blankly. This is. Chen Hao smiled. Nothing, just a strange beast that thinks it is a god, don't worry too much. Let's go. This. The sword god looked at the stone platform, and he didn't know what to say for a while. Strange beast? The dark magic it emits is enough to change the concentration of dark magic in the death abyss. Is this just a strange beast? Chen Hao could feel the shock of the sword god. To be honest, Chen Hao also felt a little strange just now. But the biological identification device said that it was in the cub stage, so it must be a strange beast. Chen Hao smiled and said, let's go, let's look around first, I have to collect more magic crystals. As he said, he walked out. Fire Phoenix looked at Chen Hao's back, with a smile on its face. You are worthy of being the master, you can even subdue gods. Xiao Ying also nodded in agreement. Tu Yi and the others followed Chen Hao, and Fire Phoenix and Xiao Ying followed one after another. Only the sword god was left standing there in a daze. Chen Hao left the canyon. The sword god also followed out. Chen Hao looked at the somewhat dazed sword god, and said with a smile, old man, are you okay? The sword god was slightly startled. He looked at Chen Hao, and said with a smile, with you here, I feel that I can't get better. Chen Hao was stunned. He smiled awkwardly, and touched the back of his head. The sword god adjusted his shocked emotions, looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, well, now that things are done, it's almost time, and I have to leave. Well. Chen Hao nodded slightly. The sword god turned and left. Chen Hao looked at the back of the sword god, watching the sword god sink into the black fog. Looking at the figure of the sword god leaving, Chen Hao retracted his sight. Next, continue to collect some holy beast magic crystals. Chen Hao spent some time again. Collect some magic crystals in the death abyss. After the magic crystals were collected, Chen Hao rode the fire phoenix, flew out of the death abyss, and flew towards the direction of Wolong Island. The dark attribute magic crystals have been collected almost, and they are enough. Next, it's time to go back to Wolong Island. However, Chen Hao felt inexplicably tired. This body is immortal, but because Chen Hao has the habit of sleeping, his biological clock will habitually give Chen Hao a sense of tiredness every night, reminding Chen Hao that it is time to go to bed. Chen Hao sat on the head of the fire phoenix and felt his own tiredness. According to the time, it should be late at night now, Chen Hao muttered. He patted the head of the fire phoenix under him, and said, find a place to land, I want to sleep. The fire phoenix was slightly startled. It said, okay. The fire phoenix flapped its wings and flew downwards. It was easy to rest. Chen Hao took out the wooden house card from the book, and then found a spacious place to materialize the wooden house card into a wooden house. Then he prepared some food for Xiao Ying and himself, and then called out the dark dragon, fed the dark dragon with the Beast King magic crystal, and fed Tu Yi and the others with the dark semi-saint magic crystal. After all these things were done, Chen Hao turned them back into cards and put them into the book. Chen Hao lay down on the wooden bed and fell asleep as soon as he closed his eyes. Until the next day. Chen Hao was awakened by his biological clock. After waking up, Chen Hao opened his eyes and looked at the familiar ceiling above. He sat up slowly, touched his messy hair, and then looked at the window. It was pitch black outside the window. Chen Hao was sure that it was morning. This damn place is the same dark whether it is day or night. Chen Hao muttered. However, I exercised a lot yesterday, and I slept really comfortably last night, Chen Hao said as he walked out of the wooden house. This wooden house was sent by God. It was a little small, but with it, no matter what was outside, it could not disturb Chen Hao's sleep. It was a relatively comfortable sleep. Chen Hao stretched and looked around. Chen Hao found that he was in a small forest at the moment. However, this small forest only had withered black tree trunks, and no leaves could be seen. The tree trunks were only as thick as bowls, and they were far apart. A desolate atmosphere came towards me. What an uncomfortable place, no wonder King Lu hates this kind of place, Chen Hao muttered. Book, Chen Hao whispered. Yesterday, I fed the big wolves with holy beast magic crystals. Today, they should have evolved. I wonder what they will evolve into. Chen Hao flipped the card and looked at the card slot used to enlarge the big wolves. At first glance, entering Saint Period Storm Shock Wolf. Chen Hao looked at the card and glanced at the picture. He stretched his eyebrows and waved his hand. The card flew out. Transformation. The card disappeared. A humanoid life form appeared in front of Chen Hao. This creature was 2 meters tall, with a wolf head and a wolf tail behind it. Its skin was gray, its abdomen was white, and its body was full of muscles. On its neck, it wore a blue and white metal ring, and held a silver metal hammer in its hand. The metal ring and the metal hammer were surrounded by silver lightning, which was like a snake, circling above. These lightnings would occasionally move on its body, making it surrounded by light. This was the new posture of the big wolf. The big wolf came back to its senses, opened its light blue pupils, and looked at Chen Hao. Seeing Chen Hao, the big wolf's eyes lit up, and there was joy in his eyes. Master. The big wolf said happily, Master, look, I am much smaller now, almost as tall as you, Master, he he. Hearing this, Chen Hao couldn't help but roll his eyes at it. Others evolve to become stronger, but this creature evolves to become smaller. The nickname that Huo Feng gave it was really right. Chen Hao crossed his arms and said, What's the use of your hammer? When the big wolf heard it, it looked at the hammer in its hand, looked at Chen Hao, and said with a smile, This is the weapon that comes with my form. It can be used like this. Master, I'll show you. As he said that, the big wolf looked up at the sky. It waved its hand. The silver hammer flew out of its hand and flew into the sky above. As it flew out, the silver hammer began to spin. Crazy lightning surrounded the hammer, and the crazy spinning hammer turned into a white ball of light. The white light lit up. Chen Hao only felt a bright light in front of his eyes, and a lightning as thick as a bucket came out from the white ball of light that the hammer turned into, and hit the ground. At the moment this lightning appeared, Chen Hao felt a sudden whiteness in front of his eyes. After the white passed, there was a loud noise. Boom! At the moment the loud noise sounded, Chen Hao felt the ground under his feet tremble violently. The ground shook. Chen Hao's body also shook a little. The white light faded away. Chen Hao looked forward. He saw that in the distance, there was a pit more than 10 meters deep on the ground that was struck by lightning. The pit was red, and the land had melted into red magma. Next to the pit, lightning was moving. The big wolf retracted his hand and the hammer returned to his hand. It looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, Master, how is it? I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 122. Chen Hao looked at the pit with mist coming out. He retracted his sight and looked at the big wolf, not bad. The big wolf chuckled and looked a little happy. Chen Hao looked at the book floating in front of him. Entering Saint Stage Heaven-swallowing giant winged wolf. This is the second wolf. Chen Hao released the second wolf. A huge monster with a shoulder height of more than 10 meters appeared in front of Chen Hao. It stood tall like a small mountain. It was covered with black and red hair and had a pair of huge wings behind it. It was muscular and looked very scary. After the heaven-swallowing giant winged wolf appeared, it looked around majestically and looked at the surrounding environment. Suddenly, it seemed to notice something and looked down. Chen Hao raised his head and looked at the second wolf who was looking down. At this moment, the second wolf's huge wolf head alone was almost bigger than the wooden house behind Chen Hao. It looked scary. If it were an ordinary person, he would probably faint from shock when he looked into the eyes of the sky-swallowing giant winged wolf. Chen Hao was already used to being with such a giant, and his mood was not affected at all. As soon as the second wolf saw Chen Hao, its eyes suddenly lit up, and a smile appeared on its face. "Master, I have evolved. Look, am I handsome?" The middle-aged man said this in a sissy voice, and Chen Hao showed a helpless look. "Handsome, handsome, handsome, you are too big now, change back to human form first." "Oh, okay," the second wolf hurriedly said. The huge body of the second wolf glowed with green light, and then began to shrink. Soon, it turned into a human form. A handsome young man with long black hair appeared in front of Chen Hao. It wore a black and white robe and looked at Chen Hao with a raised corner of its mouth. When it saw Chen Hao looking at it, it immediately smiled, raised its hands, covered its face with its sleeves, and showed a charming look. "Master, am I beautiful?" Chen Hao looked at it, and his eyelids twitched. "I can't stand it." Chen Hao rushed over, raised his foot, and kicked the humanoid Erlang directly. Erlang was kicked 2 meters away. Fell to the ground. "Ouch!" Erlang covered his waist and looked at Chen Hao with grievance. "Master, be careful, don't break your foot." Chen Hao rolled his eyes, picked up a stone from the ground, and threw it directly at Erlang. "Ah!" Erlang screamed. Chen Hao smashed a few stones crazily before stopping and taking a deep breath. "This feels good." He was too lazy to look at Erlang. Chen Hao had been enduring this bitch for a long time. However, Chen Hao's attack did not cause any harm to Erlang at all. This guy was at the level of a holy beast, and Chen Hao's beating was too light. Chen Hao opened the book. The second wolf stood up, straightened his clothes, and then approached the big wolf and asked cautiously, "Big brother, the master seems very angry today, what's going on?" Big Wolf was standing with his hands on his chest, looking serious, and heard the second wolf coming over to ask this question. He rolled his eyes and said, "Second brother, you have a problem." When the second wolf heard it, he looked at the big wolf. "Huh." Chen Hao didn't bother to pay attention to the second wolf. This guy's personality is simply a pervert. Perversion is innate, there is no hope. Chen Hao looked at the card used to place the Hurricane Wolf before. Hurricane Wolf is also the third wolf. Entering Saint Stage World destroying Hurricane Wolf. Chen Hao picked up the card and threw it forward. Transform. When the card turned into the world destroying Hurricane Wolf, Chen Hao could feel a gust of wind whistling. The wind made Chen Hao's clothes rustle. Chen Hao raised his head slightly and looked forward. A giant beast that was more than 10 meters tall and as huge as a mountain appeared in front of Chen Hao. This was the third wolf. The third wolf's hair was much longer than the second wolf's. When the wind blew, the third wolf's hair flew. The hair on its back was gray and its belly was white. It stood in front of Chen Hao. Although it did not look as fierce and scary as the second wolf, it looked handsome and majestic. If the second wolf had some evil spirit of eating children, the third wolf had a righteous spirit. The third wolf looked around, then looked down and saw Chen Hao. There was joy in the third wolf's eyes. It opened its mouth and wanted to say something, and then it seemed to realize that its body was a little too big. Its body glowed. The body began to shrink, and finally turned into a human figure about the same height as Chen Hao. This was a handsome young man with long silver hair. The man looked at Chen Hao with a smile on his face. "Master, I have evolved." Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled. "Yeah." He the third wolf said with a smile, "Master, I am now a holy beast. As a world-destroying hurricane wolf, my magic can easily destroy an empire. Am I awesome?" It looked expectant and wanted to be praised. Chen Hao smiled. "Not bad, not bad." The third wolf always finds ways to ask for Chen Hao's praise. Because of its personality, the fire phoenix follows suit, and starts to ask Chen Hao for praise when doing something. However, the third wolf still makes Chen Hao feel more comfortable than the second wolf. "Old third, why do you have white hair? You look effeminate," the second wolf suddenly spoke. Hearing this, Chen Hao, the big wolf and the third wolf all looked at the second wolf. The second wolf walked around, looking at the third wolf, and said, "This is not right. It looks so feminine, not good." Chen Hao's mouth twitched. "I didn't expect that this would come from the second wolf." The second wolf was stunned, and it looked at Chen Hao, with confusion on its face. Chen Hao didn't bother to pay attention to it and looked at the book. "Look at the big bear and the fire fox, what have those two little guys become?" Thinking, Chen Hao looked at the card slot where the Collapse Mountain Ancestor Bear card was placed before. Entering Saint Period Overturning Ancient Bear. Chen Hao picked up the Overturning Ancient Bear card and threw it forward. Transform. As the card disappeared, Chen Hao smelled a scent of soil. Then, the figure of Overturning Ancient Bear appeared in front of Chen Hao. He raised his head and looked up. This is a humanoid giant bear with black and brown hair all over its body. The giant bear stood on 2 feet and held a pitch-black giant hammer on its shoulder. It was more than 20 meters in size. In this wide environment, its huge and towering body seemed to reach the clouds. It was full of muscles, whether it was the muscles on its arms or on its body, and its body was extremely sturdy. It was like a humanoid giant bear as big as a mountain. It looked particularly terrifying. This was the ancient bear. After the big bear appeared, it subconsciously lowered its head slightly, and after seeing Chen Hao, it slowly closed its eyes. The huge body glowed. Its body began to shrink. It slowly turned into a human form. This was the posture of a middle-aged strong man. His face was full of stubble, his hair was short, and his body was strong. The big bear looked at Chen Hao, then put his hands on his chest and bowed slightly to Chen Hao. "Master. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world." Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 123. Looking at the honest and taciturn big bear in front of him, Chen Hao smiled. "Congratulations, you have also become a holy beast." When the big bear heard it, it raised its face and looked at Chen Hao with its resolute face without much fluctuation. "Everything that big bear has is given by the master." "Uncle Big Bear, your human form is so strong." The second wolf came over and looked at the big bear. When the big bear heard it, it turned its head to look at the second wolf. The big bear's expressionless and resolute face with the majestic eyes scared the second wolf for a moment. The second wolf recovered and smiled. The big bear slowly retracted his gaze and looked at Chen Hao. Chen Hao looked at these little guys. He took back time and looked at the book. Before, the fire fox was a 3-tailed fox of heavenly fire, so what did the fire fox look like now? Entering the saint stage burning sky 5-tailed fox. Well, the fire fox has also successfully evolved. Chen Hao took out the card and waved his hand. The card flew out. Transform. The card disappeared. At the moment when the card disappeared, Chen Hao could feel a burning breath coming towards him. A giant red fox more than 10 meters tall appeared in front of Chen Hao. After it came out, it was sitting on the ground. It had flaming hair all over its body, and 5 fox tails were swaying gracefully behind it. The fire fox looked around gracefully, and its sight fell on the bottom. It saw Chen Hao. Its red pupils met Chen Hao's sight. The fire fox slowly closed its eyes, and a red light appeared all over its body. Its huge body like a mountain began to shrink. Soon, it turned into a human form. A beautiful woman wearing a red robe, with a proud figure and a beautiful appearance, appeared in front of Chen Hao. The beautiful woman looked delicate, with 5 tails behind her. She slowly opened her charming red eyes and looked at Chen Hao. The beautiful woman raised her hand elegantly, placed it on her chest, and bowed slightly to Chen Hao, "Master." Chen Hao nodded slightly, "It looks good." When the fire fox heard it, there was a hint of joy in its eyes. Chen Hao flipped through the book and looked at Shui Yi, Yan Yi, and the flower demon. These are all monsters. Monsters do not need to eat. They are not needed for the time being. Let them stay in the book first and don't release them. Tuyi and the others are monsters, but they were fed last night. Turn them into cards and put them in the book. Because the taming degree is full, the hunger degree is not much consumed. It doesn't matter if you put them for 3 or 4 days and then feed them, just let them stay in the book. The most important thing now is to return to Wolong Island. The fire phoenix must be released as a mount. Xiaoying has the ability to teleport, which can also be used. Before preparing to set off, let's take a look at the pile of dark monsters collected yesterday. Yesterday Chen Hao collected a lot of dark monsters, most of which were in the cub stage. After one night, most of them evolved from the cub stage to the juvenile stage. There was not much change from the cub stage to the juvenile stage. Chen Hao flipped through these dark monster cards and raised his eyebrows. However, there was a card that still made Chen Hao a little concerned. I spent a day in the death abyss yesterday. A lot of things happened. I spent too much energy and my mind was in a mess. Now I can focus on the dark goddess I met yesterday. Chen Hao looked at the card slot where he used to put the Dark Lolita card yesterday. Juvenile stage Dark Girl. Taming degree, 100%. Seeing this, Chen Hao was slightly startled. Has it evolved? Chen Hao took out the card and observed it carefully. Juvenile stage Dark Girl. Taming degree, 100%. Description: Dark Girl, a dark attribute monster, evolved from Dark Lolita. It is produced by the Dark Goddess's divinity and memory condensing a large amount of dark magic. The Dark Goddess's divine nature and memory condensed a large amount of dark magic. Chen Hao repeated the description on the card, "Isn't it the Dark Goddess? I heard from the old sword god yesterday that the Dark Goddess is the god who created the demons, so it should be a true god, but this is not right. If it is a true god, does it mean that it is of the same level as the god I met when I was reborn? Well, it should be unlikely. If it is of the same level as the god I met when I was reborn, the trap rope given to me by the god I met can capture it. This is unlikely." Chen Hao had a lot of questions in his mind, but it was obvious that Chen Hao himself could not get the answers to these questions. "I couldn't figure it out at all. The answers he came up with could only be regarded as guesses and speculations, and they were completely uncertain answers." Suddenly, Chen Hao's mind flashed. "By the way, wouldn't it be known if I asked it?" Chen Hao looked at the card in his hand. "This thing is now 100% tamed. Then ask it, it should tell you the answer, right? But, is this 100% taming reliable? This is a god." Chen Hao thought for a moment. "Try it. Transform." The card in his hand disappeared. In front of Chen Hao, a figure appeared out of thin air. A girl about 1.34 meters tall appeared in front of Chen Hao. It was wearing a black gauze dress, short black hair, and under the bangs was a chubby face unique to girls. It was closing its eyes, and then it slowly opened its eyes, revealing a pair of clear and deep black eyes. When Chen Hao saw this, he suddenly felt a little pressure. It woke up. This thing is a god. Chen Hao couldn't help thinking, what should I do if it attacks me? What should I do if it attacks me? The girl blinked, then raised her face and looked at Chen Hao. Seeing Chen Hao, her eyes lit up slightly, and her chubby face suddenly showed a sweet smile. Master. Chen Hao was stunned. It was completely different from what he imagined. This god was also tamed by the book. Chen Hao blinked. Could it be that the so-called god is really the same as the strange beast? Chen Hao adjusted his shocked heart. He smiled, squatted down, looked at the little guy in front of him, and said with a smile, "Little guy, are you really the dark goddess?" When the dark girl heard it, she smiled and said, "Master, of course I am the dark goddess. In this world, I control the night and the darkness. All the dark magic is released by me. I am the dark goddess, Shataya. It's just that since 30,000 years ago, during the War of the Gods, I was plotted against by other gods and my godhood was broken. That's why I have been sleeping for so long before waking up." Speaking of this, the dark girl paused, looked at Chen Hao, and smiled and said, "Master, you created me and then left this world for so long. It's normal that you don't know these things. If you have anything to ask, I can tell you." Ah! Chen Hao was stunned. Suddenly, a flash of inspiration passed through Chen Hao's mind. He understood in an instant. It turns out that this is how taming creates loyalty. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 124. The last sentence made Chen Hao realize one thing. The book will add a memory that does not exist to the tamed target. At the same time, this memory tells the tamed target that everything about them was created by Chen Hao. Therefore, they will be completely loyal to Chen Hao. In the eyes of the current dark goddess, everything about it was created by Chen Hao. So Chen Hao is its master. This book is too scary. Chen Hao adjusted his inner shock, took a deep breath, and then asked another question, "Little guy, let me ask you. Among the gods you know, is there a silver-haired goddess who looks like an angel, has a pair of wings, a golden head, and wears silver armor?" When the dark goddess heard this, her eyes shone with a glimmer, and she said, "Master, are you talking about the god of light?" "But no, the god of light has 3 pairs of wings, and he is a man." Speaking of this, she shook her head, "No." She looked at Chen Hao. "In this world, there are 7 gods. Among these 7 gods, there is no goddess like the one you are talking about, Master." Hearing this, Chen Hao was slightly stunned. It seems that it is confirmed that the god I met when I was reborn is different from Shataya. At least the realm is different. Forget it, Chen Hao is too lazy to think about it. Next, what can be done is to return to Wolong Island. Or Light Butterfly Beast. That little guy is still in the Beast King stage. I am now lacking light magic crystals. Forget it, let's go back to Wolong Island first. We have gained too much in the Death Abyss. We need to study it slowly and cultivate all the monsters we have obtained first. Chen Hao muttered to himself while thinking. "Master, do you want to go to Wolong Island?" Suddenly, a voice came. Hearing this voice, Chen Hao looked at Shataya who was talking beside him. Shataya looked at Chen Hao, and its big eyes were full of inquiry. Chen Hao hummed, "Yes, what's wrong?" Shataya's chubby face showed a sweet smile, and said with a smile, "This place is a distance from Wolong Island. I can use magic to summon the swift bird and let it take us to Wolong Island." Summon. Chen Hao's pupils narrowed slightly, and there was a hint of surprise in his eyes. Summon. Ah, Seeing Chen Hao asking, Shataya was stunned for a moment, then realized something, came back to his senses, and said with a smile, "It is a magical creature, a creature made of magic, not a monster or a beast. It is very fast, and I usually use it as a mount when I am on the road." Magic creature, first time I heard of it. Chen Hao was interested, and he smiled and said, "Okay, give it a try." He has never ridden a so-called magical creature. He was very interested at the moment. Shataya hummed, and it turned its head and looked at the open space next to it. It stretched out its little hand and waved it. Under Chen Hao's gaze, black mist swept out of Shataya's hand. The black mist turned into a rolling thick fog and condensed in front. Suddenly, a magical creature that looked like an eagle and was made of black mist appeared in front of Chen Hao. Like an eagle, but very huge, it stood on the ground, with a shoulder height of about 3 meters. However, the difference between its appearance and that of a demon beast and a monster is that its body is filled with black fog, and its body is made of condensed black fog, and the edges are filled with black fog. It looks like a creature made of condensed fog, or rather, it is not like a creature, but a creature made of fog, that is, dark magic element. "Is this a magical creature?" Chen Hao muttered to me. "It's a bit like the 10,000-year sword soul encountered in the Death Abyss, but the 10,000-year sword soul has a worn-out sword, and that sword is real." Death Abyss. Suddenly, Shataya repeated Chen Hao's words. Chen Hao looked at Shataya, but saw Shataya puffing her mouth and looking at the swift bird in front of her. Chen Hao said with a smile, "What's wrong with the Death Abyss?" Satya was startled. It looked at Chen Hao, and said with a smile, "Master, you don't know, the Death Abyss was a canyon that was created when we fought. Later, I died in it. The dark magic produced by my body and godhood ran everywhere. As a result, the miscellaneous things in the canyon absorbed the magic emitted by me and turned into various monsters. My burial place has become a Death Abyss." Satya crossed her arms. These young people later are quite good at naming. Chen Hao was silent. "Let's go back to Wolong Island first and talk slowly." Thinking about it, Chen Hao turned around and looked at the 3 wolves. But he found that the 3 wolves, the big bear and the fire fox were all staring at Satya at this moment. The 5 of them looked solemn, and there was fear in their eyes. They seemed a little scared. Satya. Watching their expressions change, Chen Hao said, "Hey." The 5 little guys came back to their senses and looked at Chen Hao together. Seeing Chen Hao looking at him, the big wolf was slightly startled, and then he came to his senses and said, "Master." Chen Hao smiled and said, "You are afraid of it, is it because you know it?" The big wolf heard it, and then he came to his senses and looked at Shataya. But he found that Shataya was looking at him. When their eyes met, the big wolf's body suddenly froze, and he quickly retracted his gaze and looked at Chen Hao, with a look of fear. "Master, I don't know it, but, the dark magic element it exudes, is so scary." Chen Hao was slightly startled and looked at Fire Fox. Discovering that the always elegant Fire Fox had transformed into a beautiful woman, there was cold sweat on her forehead, and her delicate face was slightly white at the moment, with an expression of fear. When it saw Chen Hao looking at itself, it swallowed. "Master, we don't know it, but it." Firefox swallowed, holding his stomach with his hand, looking uncomfortable. Seeing this, Chen Hao frowned and looked at Satya. Satya seemed to realize something, and looked at Chen Hao. "It's my magic pressure." After the words fell, Satya's white with grey skin began to turn to normal whiteness at a speed visible to the naked eye. The faint black mist surrounding Satya also slowly dissipated. Chen Hao looked at the Firefox and the others and found that their expressions were slowly improving. Firefox is no longer so uncomfortable. Satya folded his hands on his chest, looked at the Firefoxes, and said calmly, "The concentration of magic element will cause magic element pressure. Generally, the concentration will not cause any harm, but if the concentration of magic element is too high, the pressure generated will it's very big. Some creatures with less magic energy will be directly overwhelmed by the pressure of magic energy. I was not careful. I just didn't expect them to be so weak. Hearing this, Chen Hao was speechless. He looked at the firefoxes. Satya is only in her infancy now, and Firefox and the others are both holy beasts. But now, Satya didn't intend to hurt them. It was just the pressure of magic that was released unconsciously, which made the firefoxes, as holy beasts, feel so uncomfortable that they felt like vomiting. Is this the power of God? Then, if Satya evolves to the level of a holy beast, how terrible would it be? I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 125. Chen Hao decided to try the speed of the magical creature Swift Bird created by the little girl. He turned the big wolf and the others back into cards, put them into the book, and let them rest. Then he followed Shisha, the dark girl, and rode on the back of the Swift Bird. The Swift Bird flapped its wings made of black mist and rushed into the sky. Chen Hao was covered by a transparent black cover. The Swift Bird was very fast, and Chen Hao could feel the oncoming wind. However, with the protection of this cover, Chen Hao would not be blown away by the wind. The back of the Swift Bird was very spacious. Chen Hao sat on the back of the Swift Bird and looked at the scenery in front. He retracted his sight and looked at the Swift Bird under his butt. The Swift Bird looked like a black cloud, but sitting on its back, Chen Hao could clearly feel the substance. This feeling was like sitting on a bed, soft and elastic, but there was no muscle feeling and body temperature like riding on the back of the fire phoenix or the three wolves. Is this a magical creature? However, the Swift Bird is indeed very fast, and it feels faster than the fire phoenix. This thing seems to be born for speed. No wonder the little girl Shataya uses it to travel. This thing is not bad for traveling. Although it is not as fast as Xiaoying's teleportation, Chen Hao is not in such a hurry now. After all, even if he returns to Wolong Island now, there is no urgent matter, and he is relatively leisurely. Even if the second dragon wants to lay dragon eggs, it will be 9 days later. No hurry, so Chen Hao is not in a hurry to let Xiaoying use teleportation. Chen Hao sat on the back of the Swift Bird, and he called out the book when he was free. He opened the book floating in front of him. Yesterday Xiaobai turned into a 10,000-year dragon, I wonder how it is today. Thinking of this, Chen Hao looked at the card slot that was used to hold the 10,000-year dragon card before. Insight. Awakening period 10,000-year dragon. Seeing this, Chen Hao was slightly startled, no evolution. Chen Hao thought for a while. He remembered that the fire phoenix did not evolve once a day during its evolution. It also paused for a few days and then evolved slowly. It seems that Xiaobai's evolution will probably be the same as the fire phoenix. The alien beasts do not need to be fed with magic crystals. They carry enough magic elements themselves. All they need is time. Chen Hao is not in a hurry. What about the green deer? The last time the green deer evolved from the cub stage to the juvenile stage. From the young green deer, it evolved into a fluorescent green deer. What about now? Mature stage green fluorescent deer. Evolved again, but... Chen Hao looked at the pattern on the card and found that the green deer did not change much, but the body became translucent, with a halo on it, which looked a lot more gorgeous. It was a little more beautiful. Chen Hao was not so interested in beauty. Chen Hao pursed his lips in boredom, and continued to turn the pages of the book, looking at the dark dragon and rabbit one that he had fed before. Beast King Stage Dark Dragon. The dark dragon has evolved. It looks a little darker and bigger in the picture. It seems that the evolution of dragons is similar. It's a bit boring, Chen Hao muttered. Rabbit 1, Rabbit 2, and the other 5, with Xiaoying as an example, chose the same evolutionary route as Xiaoying. All 5 little guys evolved into semi-saint level knight charms. Seeing this, Chen Hao smiled, these little guys are quite tacit. Master, suddenly, a voice came from the side. Hearing this voice, Chen Hao looked at the dark girl Shataya sitting next to him. Shataya was sitting cross-legged. It looked at Chen Hao with a smile on its chubby face, he. This guy laughed mischievously like a little girl. This laugh made Chen Hao realize instantly that this guy had something to ask of him. Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows and said with a smile, "What's wrong?" He. Shataya smiled and said, "We will fly forward for 5 minutes and pass a demon city. There is a palace dedicated to me in that city. In that palace, there is a magic weapon of mine. I want to take that magic weapon back." Said this, Shataya paused, lowered his head awkwardly, held his calves with both hands, sat cross-legged and shook his slender body, and said, "Master, let's go, okay." It hesitated, and its expression was obviously asking Chen Hao to go over, but it was afraid that Chen Hao would be angry. That posture was too much like a little girl who saw candy on the street and wanted her father to buy candy, but knew that her family was poor and was embarrassed. Chen Hao smiled, "Of course, but you have to control your magic pressure. I don't want those demons to be crushed to death by your magic pressure as soon as I enter the demon city." Chen Hao is now more relaxed. What he has to do now is to feed some dark attribute holy beast magic crystals to Rabbit, who has evolved into Night Charm, and then wait for tomorrow to see how the monsters he owns will evolve. In other words, Chen Hao still has a lot of time now, and it is okay to go to the demon city to take a look. However, Chen Hao is a little worried about Shataya's divine power. Chen Hao has an immortal body, so he will not be affected. And because Fire Phoenix and others are holy beasts, they are just uncomfortable and want to vomit. But if it is an ordinary person, it is estimated that whether the body can be intact or not. When Shataya heard it, its eyes lit up slightly. It looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, I will definitely control it." Its face was full of joy. Chen Hao looked at Shataya's posture, he smiled, habitually stretched out his hand and touched its little head. Shataya felt Chen Hao's touch, it closed its eyes, enjoying Chen Hao's comfort. Chen Hao touched it twice, then retracted his hand, and then looked at the Warcraft card and monster card in his book. During this period of time, he got too many monsters. He couldn't take care of them. However, fortunately, monsters don't need to eat, otherwise there are so many and their bodies are so big. If they eat, the mountain will be eaten up. Suddenly, Chen Hao's pupils condensed slightly. This is. Chen Hao took out a card from the book. Entering Saint Period Ancient Tree of Life. Taming Degree, 100%. Fertility, 26%. Chen Hao discovered that on the card of the ancient tree of life that evolved from the little wood spirit, in addition to the taming degree, there was an additional color bar, and the text displayed next to the color bar was fertility degree. Chen Hao's expression was a little surprised, and he muttered in his heart. The ancient tree of life can breed wood elves? Before, when it was still in the semi-saint stage, it could breed sub-elves? It was said that it would take 30 years to breed a sub-elf. And now? Chen Hao's face suddenly had an excited smile. Books can help the ancient tree of life breed wood elves? Oh my god, this is too cool. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 126. Chen Hao smiled, it's really exciting. He put the ancient tree of life card back into the book. Master, we are coming. Satya's voice came. Chen Hao came back to his senses and looked at Satya. I saw Satya standing on the back of the bird of prey, looking ahead. Chen Hao looked along Satya's line of sight. He could see a city appearing not far away. Seeing the city, Chen Hao's eyes gained a touch of novelty. It is said to be a city, but this city is completely different from the modern cities Chen Hao saw in his previous life. The city in front of you is surrounded by high walls. This wall is very high, probably 50 or 60 meters tall. In his previous life, Chen Hao had never seen such a high wall. The wall encloses a large area. Because Chen Hao is flying in mid-air, he can see the buildings behind the wall. This city is similar to the walled city from the medieval era in the previous life, but the walls are much higher than the medieval city walls from the previous life. In order to facilitate the viewing, Chen Hao had already stood up. He crossed his hands across his chest and muttered, "It is understandable that you can protect against monsters and monsters. During war, you can protect against enemy magic." Chen Hao looked at Satya and said, "Let's land further away from that city, so as not to be regarded as enemies. In a place like this, if you fly directly across the city wall, you will inevitably be taken care of by the defenders inside as enemies." Although Chen Hao didn't think it could cause any harm to him, it would inevitably be a big headache if he was treated as a hostile unit. Satya was slightly startled and looked at Chen Hao. "Master, why don't we fly in directly?" Chen Hao smiled, "Let's be gentle, the master loves peace." Hearing this, Satya smiled, "Okay." The swift bird flapped its wings made of black mist and flew downwards. The swift bird landed about 500 meters away from the city wall. Chen Hao and Chataya got off the back of the swift bird. Chen Hao watched as Satya waved her hand and the bird of prey disappeared. He withdrew his gaze and looked ahead. The high wall in front seemed very close. Of course, Chen Hao knew very well that this was just an illusion of vision. Although the shock of the swift bird was too great and scared the guards, so Fi Yiwen stopped a little, "But, I have to rely on the 11 bus to get there, it's a bit lazy just thinking about it," Chen Hao muttered. "Book." Chen Hao called out the book and flipped through it. "Can you find some mounts that aren't so inconspicuous? The big wolves and the others are not good at riding holy beasts. The dark dragon, no, it's too eye-catching. Otherwise, King Lu. Alien beast." Chen Hao touched his chin, "It still doesn't feel right." "Master, do you want a mount?" came a voice from the side. Chen Hao looked at Satya. Satya smiled and said, "We can use magical creatures." Chen Hao rolled his eyes, "Forget it, you will scare them, I will just come and look for you." "Oh." Satya responded. As for Satya's magical creatures, if you mess with any of them, big trouble will probably happen. Chen Hao crossed his arms and looked at the cards in the book. "By the way, that's the city of the demons. Then you can catch the demons in the abyss of death. It's only been 1 day, and they have just evolved from the cub stage to the juvenile stage, and their strength is about the same. Find something bigger that can be used as a weapon. Mount." Thinking about it, Chen Hao glanced at it. Suddenly, Chen Hao's eyes lit up slightly. "This is okay." Chen Hao took out a card from the book. Change. The card disappears. A monster appeared in front of Chen Hao. This is a bone horse. Infancy period juvenile bone horse. Description: juvenile bone horse, a dark attribute monster, evolved from the small bone horse. This type of monster is a monster transformed from horse bones that were invaded by rich dark magic. Looking at the young bone horse in front of him, the corner of Chen Hao's mouth twitched. Sure enough, the pictures on the cards can be deceiving. The juvenile bone horse looks the same as the adult bone horse in the picture, but in reality, the height of the bone horse in front of me, including its head, is less than 1 meter. Similar to Sika deer. This body type is probably comparable to the girlish posture of Satya. But if you want adults to ride it, it won't work. "Do you want to change one end?" Chen Hao muttered. "Master, are you too small?" Suddenly, a voice came. Chen Hao was startled. He looked at Satya beside him, and saw Satya looking at Chen Hao with a smile on his face. Chen Hao crossed his chest with his hands and nodded slightly. Yes, I'm small. Hey, let me do it, Satya said, and it stretched out its little hand. When Satya stretched out her little hand, Chen Hao saw a black mist appear in Satya's hand, and the black mist flew down on the young bone horse. The young bone horse's originally empty pupils lit up with red light. Its size grows at a rate visible to the naked eye. It turned out that the young bone horse was just a pile of white horse skeletons surrounded by a little bit of black mist. And along with the growth of the bone horse body, its shoulder height reaches about 1.5 meters, and it is nearly 2 meters tall when it raises its head. Black muscle and skin sprouted from its frame. The whole bone horse suddenly had muscles, skin, and even hair, and it looked like it was alive. Its pupils are red, and the ponytail behind it is made of black mist. Chen Hao was stunned. He looked at Satya. What did you do? Satya looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, I used my magic to help it evolve. This way it will grow bigger. Chen Hao was slightly startled. Evolution. Chen Hao took out the biological identification device and pointed it at the young bone horse in front of him. Under identification. Authentication completed. Beast King stage Black Flame and Red-Eyed Horse. The Black Flame and Red-Eyed Horse is a dark attribute monster. It is a monster formed by absorbing a large amount of dark magic from horse bones. Chen Hao looked at Satya. Chen Hao remembered what Satya had said before, that the dark magic element in the Death Abyss was overflowed from its dead divine body. All the monsters in the Death Abyss are actually creatures that gained life by absorbing the dark magic that overflowed from their bodies. In other words, Satya has the ability to forcibly evolve dark attribute monsters. This is the power of the Dark Goddess. In other words, Satya can encourage the evolution of any dark attribute monster without any side effects. This thing is a humanoid plug-in, right? Chen Hao was stunned. Noticing Chen Hao looking at her, Satya showed a playful smile on Chen Hao's face. Am I awesome? Chen Hao came back to his senses, blinked his eyes, and smiled bitterly. It's amazing. He looked away and looked at the Black Flame and Red-Eyed Colt in front of him. The Beast King stage should be fine. He looked at Satya. Let's go. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 127. Saddle. Chen Hao was about to ride on it. As soon as he put his hand on the horse, he noticed that there was a saddle on the back of this Black Flame Red-Eyed Colt. Obviously, this Black Flame Red-Eyed Colt belongs to the Beast King stage monster, and its evolution is not for being ridden. In other words, this saddle cannot be accompanied by the evolution of the Black Flame Red-Eyed Colt. Then there is only one possibility: this saddle is made of dark magic element by Shataya. Chen Hao knows that wood magic element can form plants, and earth magic element can form soil or metal and other substances. Chen Hao never thought that dark magic element can also form matter. However, in the Death Abyss, Chen Hao has seen those dark attribute monsters use dark magic element to form armor on their bodies. Looking at Shataya's powerful ability, she can use dark magic element to form a saddle, so Chen Hao can accept it. Chen Hao pulled the reins with his hand, turned over, and rode on the Black Flame Red-Eyed Colt. It's quite soft. Chen Hao could feel that the saddle was hard, but there was a soft layer of something on top of it, which felt like a soft blanket. It felt good to sit up. Master, I'm here. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Chen Hao came back to his senses and looked to his side, only to see Shataya stepping on the stone stairs made of black fog and walking to Chen Hao's side step by step. It stood on the stone stairs in the posture of a girl, looking at Chen Hao with a smile on its face. Master, where should I sit? Hearing this, Chen Hao smiled. He stretched out his hand and picked up Shataya. Without saying a word, he directly carried Shataya to the horse's back in front of him and let it sit in front of him. The black flame red pupil horse tilted its head slightly and looked at the side with its ruby-like eyes. Chen Hao noticed the sight of the black flame red-eyed colt, and he smiled. Black flame red-eyed colt, right? Then I'll call you red-eyed. Let's go, we'll go into the city. When the black flame red-eyed colt heard this, it looked more grateful. Thank you for the name, master. Its voice was similar to that of a middle-aged strong man, low and deep, just like its muscles. Chen Hao was slightly startled, and he smiled, almost forgetting that this guy was already in the Beast King stage. Red-eyed withdrew his sight, and then ran towards the wall in front. Its speed was slower than that of the swift bird, and sitting on the horse's back, as it ran, its body was inevitably bumpy. Chen Hao held the reins and stepped on the stirrups to keep his balance. Chen Hao muttered, "Fortunately, the saddle is soft, otherwise my butt would be broken." Chen Hao originally thought that the feeling of riding a horse must be more comfortable than riding the 3 wolves that were hurricane swift wolves before. But at this moment, Chen Hao found that he was wrong. Hurricane wolf can use magic to protect itself. At the same time, Hurricane wolf's hair is very long and soft, and riding it feels much more comfortable. Riding on this horse's back is neither spacious nor bumpy. It is much more uncomfortable than expected. Chen Hao raised his head and looked forward. He found a big door in front of him. 2 guards wearing black armor and holding spears stood on both sides of the gate. When the 2 guards saw Chen Hao coming, one of them walked out and stood in front of the gate. He stretched out his hand and signaled Chen Hao to stop. Chen Hao said, "Qi Tong, stop." Qi Tong stopped. Chen Hao turned over and got off Qi Tong's back. He looked at Shataya. "You sit on Qi Tong's back and wait." Shataya hummed, and it looked forward. Chen Hao looked at the guards in front of him, and he was a little nervous. Before, when Chen Hao met people in this world, they came to visit him at his residence. This time, he took the initiative to go to someone else's city. I don't know if these guards will make things difficult for me. What should I do if they make things difficult for me? Should I release the holy beast to massacre the city? Wait, am I a little too radical? Chen Hao touched his nose and walked to the guard. This guard had 2 black horns on both sides of his forehead and his skin was very white, that is, pale. This is the same as the characteristics of the demons Chen Hao had seen before. The guard looked like a middle-aged strong man. He was wearing a black armor and had a resolute face. He first looked at Chen Hao, and then looked at the black flame-red pupil horse following Chen Hao. He retracted his gaze and looked at Chen Hao, "Human." Chen Hao was slightly startled. He smiled, "Yes, human, traveler." The guard frowned, "Why do humans want to enter the demon city? What is the purpose?" Interrogation. It's normal. After all, this is the territory of the demons. Humans should stay in the WAF continent and should not appear here. Now Chen Hao not only appeared here, but also wanted to enter their city. No wonder he was so alert. What should I do? Chen Hao touched the back of his head. Should I leave first and let Xiaoying teleport into the city? The guard saw that Chen Hao did not answer him, and his expression became more nervous. He subconsciously looked at the black flame-red pupil horse next to him, and his forehead was sweating. "Hey!" Suddenly, a voice sounded. Hearing this voice, the guard raised his head and looked at the source of the voice. I saw Shataya sitting on the back of the black flame-red pupil horse, with his hands on his chest. It had a cold face and said lightly, "You'd better be polite to my master, otherwise." The guard's pupils condensed slightly, his face turned pale in an instant, and his legs softened. Bang! He knelt on one knee on the ground. Another guard took a look, picked up his weapon, and hurried over here. The guard took a look, stretched out his hand, and stopped his companion from coming to help. The companion stopped and looked at the guard in confusion. The guard adjusted his mood, swallowed his saliva, slowly stood up, looked at Chen Hao, put his hand on his chest, bowed to Chen Hao, and bent slightly, "Sorry, I'm rude." As he said, the guard turned sideways, looked at Chen Hao, and stretched out his hand, "Please." Chen Hao blinked. "What's going on?" Obviously, Chen Hao can be sure that Chaitanya just used its magic pressure to teach the guard a lesson. Chen Hao thought that after the guard was threatened, he would directly call for help and then fight with him. When Chen Hao saw Chataya's actions, he still had a headache thinking about the fight that would follow. But he never expected that the imagined thing did not happen, and the guard became so obedient. Chen Hao was too lazy to think about it. He walked to the side of the black flame-red pupil horse and rode on it. The black flame-red pupil horse walked into the city. The guard watched the black flame-red pupil horse enter the city and swallowed his saliva. The companion next to him also came over with a nervous look on his face. He looked at the direction Chen Hao left and muttered, "The black flame-red pupil horse can be used as a mount. Who on earth is this guy?" As he said that, the companion looked at the guard. "However, you are really brave. You actually dared to stop a human riding the black flame-red pupil horse. I was scared to death just now. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world." Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 128. The guard turned his head and looked at his companion. His companion saw the guard's pale face without any blood. The guard showed a smile that was uglier than crying, "Do you think I'm not afraid?" Suddenly, the guard's face changed, and he covered his stomach with his hands. "Wow!" His legs softened, and he knelt on one knee on the ground and vomited. "Wow, you are exaggerating too much, right?" His companion was stunned. The guard vomited, and he adjusted his mood. He looked at the direction where Chen Hao left. "You don't know, that black flame-red pupil horse is enough to destroy a city, but the girl riding on the back of the black flame-red pupil horse is more terrifying than the black flame-red pupil horse. The magic element surrounding it is too terrible. Just at that moment, I thought I was going to die. In order not to lose the face of the demons in front of humans, I held on. It's too scary." Chen Hao didn't think much about it. "Anyway, it's fine." After entering the city, when Chen Hao and Chatai rode the black flame-red pupil horse along the road into the city, Chen Hao found that whether it was the demons setting up stalls on both sides of the street or the demons walking and strolling on the street, they all stopped. They looked at this side one by one. They stopped what they were doing and stared at this side. Some demons opened their mouth slightly, and their eyes were shocked and unbelievable. Chen Hao felt something was wrong. He looked at Chaitanya in front of him. Chaitanya looked like a child, no different. He looked like an ordinary human. Then, was it the influence of the black flame red-eyed colt? Black flame red-eyed colt, Beast King stage. Beast King stage monsters are considered to be relatively common in his books. Wait a minute. Chen Hao suddenly thought of something in his mind. Before, the old beast master named Reg that he met said that an awakening stage monster was enough to destroy a country. Then the Beast King stage, which is second only to the awakening stage. It seems that it is indeed the problem of the black flame red-eyed colt. Red pupil, stop. The black flame red pupil stopped. Chen Hao turned over and got off the black flame red pupil. He looked at Chaitanya, who was looking at him in confusion. Chen Hao smiled and said, "Come down." He stretched out his hand. Chaitanya saw a smile on her chubby face, and cooperated with Chen Hao, and was carried down from the horse by Chen Hao. After Chen Hao put Chaitanya down, he patted the black flame red pupil on the back. "Go back to the book and rest first. I'll call you when I need you." The black flame red pupil nodded slightly. Change. The black flame red pupil turned into a card. Chen Hao put away the card, and then looked at Chaitanya. "Do you remember where the palace dedicated to you is?" When Chaitanya heard it, it smiled. "Of course I remember, I'll lead the way." As she said that, Chaitanya jumped in front and led the way. This naughty look doesn't look like a goddess at all. Chen Hao followed Chaitanya forward. As he walked, Chen Hao looked around. The demons were a proud race, but Chen Hao looked at the city. Except for the dark weather and the different appearance of demons from humans, everything else was similar. There were demons setting up stalls on the street, demons opening shops, and demons walking and buying things. It seems that demons also need to live and eat, Chen Hao muttered. Sure enough, just as Chen Hao expected, as the black flame-red-eyed horse was put away, the demons on the road would look at Chen Hao a few more times because he was a human, but then they would still be busy with their own things. There were still few idle people. Is that a human? He looks skinny. Let's go find him and have some fun. Are you an idiot? A human dares to run to the demon continent alone, and dares to wander around in the demon city near the death abyss. You dare to find such a person to play with? Then go ahead. I'll ask your mother to collect your body later. Then, never mind. Unexpected. Chen Hao thought that there would be demons coming to trouble him, but Chen Hao found that along the way, the demons were busy with their own things, and Chen Hao walked his own way. Although some demons would look at him twice, no other demons would come up. Chen Hao came directly to the gate of a luxuriously decorated and majestic palace very safely. The palace was black all over, and the gate was open. Some demon warriors in black armor and magicians in black robes went in and out of the gate, and they seemed to be coming and going. They looked a little busy. Shataya stepped on the stone steps of the palace gate and walked into the gate. Chen Hao followed Shataya. The two entered the palace. It's so spacious, Chen Hao muttered, and he looked around. After entering the gate, there was an extremely spacious hall. Opposite the hall, there was a stone sculpture, which looked basically the same as the stone statue of Shataya that Chen Hao had seen in the death abyss before. Is this the statue of the dark goddess? Sure enough, this is the palace dedicated to the dark goddess. But, it feels a little wrong. Chen Hao found that there were many demons gathered in this spacious hall. These demons gathered together. There were also some demons in black robes sitting at the table, seemingly doing some business for people. The feeling given by this place is that it is not a palace, but more like the bank hall in Chen Hao's previous life. I'm a little irritable, Chen Hao muttered, I don't really like this kind of place. Finish things as soon as possible and leave early. Thinking about it, Chen Hao withdrew his gaze and looked at Satya. But he found Satya walking towards its idol. Satya says she wants to get her artifact back. So how does Satya plan to get his artifact back? Chen Hao had doubts. I saw Satya standing next to his statue, and it waved its hand. The statue slowly dissipated as if it had been blown through ashes. Chen Hao was startled. Satya used magic to directly destroy the idol. Chen Hao looked around and found that the demons gathered here were attracted by Satya's actions and looked here one by one. Chen Hao looked at Satya. Satya didn't care at all about the sight of the demon next to her. She stretched out her hand with her palm downwards. White mist spread and fell on the ground. Suddenly, Chen Hao saw a huge magic circle spreading out with Satya as the center. Then a red light came on. Satya's clothes were fluttering. A little red light lit up in the middle of the magic circle, then broke away from the magic circle and flew up. Satya raised his hand, and the red light fell on his little hand and turned into a ring. Mist suddenly emerged from the magic circle. 7 masses of mist condensed in front of Satya and turned into 7 demons wearing black armor. After these 7 demons appeared, they first glanced at Satya, and then squatted down towards Satya. Put your right hand on your chest, kneel on one knee in front of Satya, and salute to Satya. The clothes floating on Satya's body fell down. The magic circle dissipated. Satya looked at the ring in her hand, which showed a smile, then turned around, looked at Chen Hoxio and said, Master, I've done it. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 129. Chen Hao looked at Chitaya, who was in a young girl's posture, and the smile on her face. Chen Hao smiled bitterly. Got it done? This guy destroyed the statue in front of so many demons. I don't know if he can do it or not, and it's hard to say whether he will cause trouble. Chen Hao looked at the demons who were watching around. Chen Hao was slightly stunned. I saw that the demons knelt on one knee in front of Chitaya, lowered their heads, and their expressions were respectful. Seeing this, Chen Hao understood. These demons recognized Chitaya's identity. Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows, then walked to Chitaya's side, looking at the 7 demons who emerged from the magic circle and knelt in front of Chitaya. He looked at Chitaya. Who are these 7? Chitaya smiled and said, these are my 7 Dark Templars. When I was fighting with other gods before, I didn't have enough manpower. So I created them specially. Now my strength has not recovered and is still relatively weak. These guys may be able to help you, the master. Satya said, change. As Chitaya's voice fell. Under Chen Hao's stunned gaze, the figures of the 7 dark knights disappeared. In the blink of an eye, they turned into 7 cards floating in front of Chitaya. Chitaya stretched out her hand, took the 7 cards, and then handed the cards directly to Chen Hao. Chen Hao looked at the little girl in front of him, who was less than 1.3 meters tall, holding 7 cards in her little hand and handing them to him. He was stunned. Chitaya, can you turn the Dark Templars into cards? Chen Hao has lived in this world for a while, and during this time, Chen Hao knew one thing. That is, in this world, life forms such as humans and demons have the ability to turn things into cards. But, monsters and beasts don't. But Chitaya can actually do it? God. In other words, Chitaya can't be treated simply as a monster. It is a god, not a monster. Chen Hao adjusted his surprise, reached out to take the card, and looked at it. Half-Emperor period Dark Templar. Taming degree, 100%. Description: Dark Templar, evolved from the violent Dark Knight, has the power to destroy the world. Half-Emperor period. Chen Hao looked at Chitaya. When Chitaya heard it, it hummed. After entering the Saint period, it is the Half-Emperor period. It seems that they have experienced a lot during my absence, and their strength has degenerated. They were all in the Emperor period before. But it's okay. Chitaya looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, now they can also help the master do something. Just help yourself do something? It's probably more than that. Half-Emperor stage, this is a realm that is even more exaggerated than the Holy Beast. Unbelievable. Forget it. Chen Hao looked at Chitaya, let's go first. Chitaya smiled, yeah. Chen Hao retracted his gaze and looked at the demons kneeling beside him. It would be better to leave this place as soon as possible. The two left the palace, and Chen Hao asked Chitaya to call out the swift bird. The swift bird flapped its wings and flew high into the sky with Chen Hao and Chitaya, flying towards the direction of Wolong Island. Chen Hao looked at the scenery in front of him, and he turned around to look at Chitaya beside him. Chitaya's chubby face was smiling, and it was sitting on the back of the swift bird with its eyes closed, as if it was resting. Looking at Chitaya's posture, Chen Hao said, Chitaya. Chitaya opened his eyes and looked at Chen Hao, Master. It smiled, what's the matter? Chen Hao said, can't you force dark attribute monsters to evolve? With your current ability, how far can you make dark attribute monsters evolve? This is a question. Chitaya is almost a human plug-in. With it, Chen Hao feels that he can make dark attribute monsters evolve within a day. Just don't know to what extent Chitaya can help dark attribute monsters evolve. When Satya heard it, it said, Beast King stage. At present, my strength has not recovered. Now my strength is only 1/1000th of my strength in my prime. If it is in my prime, I can directly evolve the dark attribute monster to the semi-emperor stage. Satya said this, it paused, and then puffed up its face. If those other gods hadn't beaten me like this, I could help you do more things, master. Those bastards, Satya said angrily. Hearing this, Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. Beast King stage? That's enough. By the way, do you know how to upgrade from the Saint stage to the Semi-Emperor stage? Chen Hao looked at Satya. After hearing this, Satya looked at Chen Hao. It's like this. There are two ways for a Saint-level monster to evolve to a half-Emperor level. One is time and talent. If the monster's talent is good enough, then as long as the time is long enough, whether it is 10,000 years, tens of thousands of years, or hundreds of thousands of years, they can evolve to the half-emperor level with their own understanding. The second is to obtain the emperor core. At this point, Satya looked at Chen Hao. A half-emperor level monster will condense something similar to a magic crystal in its body, but that thing is different from the magic crystal. We call that thing the emperor core. Whether you get the emperor core by killing other half-emperor level monsters or by other means, as long as you get the emperor core, then give it to the saint level monster to eat. As long as the talent of the demon beast can withstand the power brought by the emperor core, it can become a demon beast of the semi-emperor period. Hearing this, Chen Hao's heart moved, and he looked at Satya. A demon beast of the semi-emperor period. Is there such a demon beast in this world? Chen Hao has been to Wolong Island and the Death Abyss. These two places should be the places where the magic element is most concentrated, but at most they are holy beasts. I have never seen the shadow of a demon beast of the semi-emperor period. Hearing this, Satya looked at Chen Hao, and smiled and said, I know where it is, but, now is not the time, it would be better for us not to go. Chen Hao was startled, and he looked at Satya. Why? Well, because that place is very dangerous. Not only there are demon beasts of the semi-emperor period, but also emperor period. Emperor period, I can't beat it now. Satya smiled awkwardly and embarrassedly. Hearing this, Chen Hao was startled, and he suddenly understood. Chen Hao smiled, no hurry. Yes, there is no need to be too anxious. Satya can still grow. It is only in its infancy now. If it continues to grow, the half-emperor stage may not be its opponent. Wait until it can beat it, then go. Then, you can see the big wolf and the others evolve to the half-emperor stage. Chen Hao is still looking forward to this. I am immortal and I raise a divine beast in another world. Author, Chen Wunian. Chapter 130. Nothing to do. Chen Hao took out what the sword god gave him before. This is a card. There is text on the card. Experiences of sword god's sword skills. Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. Hua. The card disappeared and turned into a thick book. Looking at the book, Chen Hao did not read the content first, but turned the book over and looked at the back of the book. Chen Hao was a little impressed by the 100 gold coins noted at the end of the magic book by the god of magic last time. I don't know if there is such a thing as sword god. Chen Hao took a look. No, it seems that the old sword god is much more reliable than the magic god. Chen Hao muttered. He opened the book and looked at the sword god's sword skills. Before, Chen Hao saw the sword skills used by the old sword god. The sword skills used by the old sword god didn't seem to have any magic power. Could it be that in addition to magic elements, there are other energies in this world? Is the energy used by the old sword god that kind of energy? With these doubts in mind, Chen Hao looked at the old swordsman's sword skills experience. In addition to magic elements, there is another invisible energy in this world. This energy will enter the swordsman's body when the swordsman exercises, strengthening the swordsman's body at the same time. Some of the energy can be used by the swordsman. The so-called sword skill is actually a way to use these energies to strengthen oneself in a short period of time and enhance one's combat effectiveness. Sword masters call this energy fighting spirit. Look at the words written on the first page of the book. Chen Hao stretched his eyebrows. That's true. So, the magician relies on controlling the magic in the outside world through mental power to release magic, while the sword god relies on training to introduce energy into the body and then uses sword skills to fight, Chen Hao muttered. Suddenly, Chen Hao's eyes lit up slightly. Last time, when I studied the bad magic given by the god of magic, I had to learn a spell for each spell. It was like memorizing a text. The stronger the magic, the longer the spell had to be memorized. It was really painful. After 2 days of learning, it was so novel. After that, I lost all interest. This martial art does not require the use of spells to communicate with the magic elements from the outside world, so there should be no need to memorize spells, right? Thinking about this, Chen Hao looked through the books. When Chen Hao saw the way to become a sword master, Chen Hao suddenly had the urge to throw the book away. The training method of a swordsman is very simple in theory, it is just to exercise. Physical exercise simply requires people to exercise every day. The energy in this world called Do-Chi will enter people's bodies when they exercise. In other words, you need to exercise consistently. In his last life, Chen Hao was an otaku who only went to work and played games at home. Ask him to exercise. If you want me to exercise, you might as well kill me. This thing is more terrifying than memorizing the text. In fact, if Chen Hao wants to become stronger, he can choose to memorize magic spells or practice sword skills. However, Chen Hao's purpose in doing this is to entertain and kill time. But now it seems that learning these two things is not entertainment at all, but torture. Torture, for a lazy person like me, it is indeed more comfortable to lie down on a wooden bed. I think it is better to learn magic in the next life, Chen Hao said, lying back. Lying directly on the back of the swift bird. He looked at the dark sky above and thought, after I die in this life, I will find that god again in the next life and ask for a magic plug-in or something, to get a magic that does not require chanting. Master, want to learn magic? Suddenly, a voice sounded. Hearing this voice, Chen Hao was slightly startled. He turned his face and looked at the dark girl beside him, Satya. Satya sat cross-legged and looked at herself. Chen Hao said with a smile, well, to pass the time. However, I don't like chanting. Those spells are too annoying to memorize. Hearing this, Satya smiled, humans do need to sing when using magic. When these words came, Chen Hao was slightly startled. He suddenly realized something, by the way, I remember that monsters, and you, don't seem to need to chant when using magic. Yes, Satya smiled, because humans use magic to communicate with external magic elements through chanting, and whether it is a monster or a beast, it directly uses the magic elements contained in the magic crystals in the body. Magic attacks. Those magic elements are equivalent to part of their bodies. Simply put, they are their hands and feet. There is no need to chant or anything. As for me, I am a god. All the dark magic elements that exist in this world can be regarded as part of my body. Chen Hao was slightly startled, no wonder. Satya stretched out her hand, Master, this is for you. She handed Chen Hao a small stack of cards. Chen Hao looked at the card that was handed to him. He stretched out his hand to take it and looked at it. The name of the card placed at the front attracts the eye. Level 8 Magic Chaos Defense. Type, Magic card. Effect, Chaos Defense, 8th level magic, but directly releases an absolute magic light shield as defense. Chen Hao was stunned and sat up. 8th level magic Dark Starfall. Type, Magic card. Effect, Dark Meteor, an 8th level magic. After use, 13 dark meteorites will fall from the sky to attack the target. 8th level magic Black Flame Purgatory. Level 8 magic Summon the Death Army. Chen Hao had heard about the 8th level magic when he read the Book of the God of Law. Theoretically, there is 11th level magic in this world. However, magic from the 8th to the 11th level only exists in ancient books and is called ancient magic. According to the ancient books of the God of Law, the God of Law is the strongest magician in the past 1,000 years, and the limit of magic that the God of Law can use is the 7th level magic. Chen Hao looked at Shataya next to him. Shataya looked at Chen Hao and said with a smile, "These magic cards are the strongest magic I can use at present, equivalent to the magic of the half-emperor period. I carded them so that you, the master, can use magic directly without magic essence. However, magic cards are disposable, and you need to continue to make them after using them." Magic cards. Chen Hao smiled. This thing is really interesting. Although Chen Hao had heard from the god that everything in this world can be carded, Chen Hao never thought that magic can also be carded. Chen Hao looked at the 4 magic cards in his hand and looked at their effects. Chaos Defense is defensive magic, Dark Starfall and Black Flame Purgatory are offensive magic, and the last one is summoning magic. 8th level, Half Emperor magic. I guess I won't be able to use this kind of thing for a while. Especially Chaos Defense, this thing, it is obvious that Shataya wants to use this to protect herself, but this thing is estimated that I will not be able to use it in this life. Warm TI.